Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out at the range with the JAKL in 308 once again. We're continuing our testing of the firearm. In our original video, we just talked about the features of the firearm, its design, things like that, and we reserved the accuracy testing for a later video, mostly because the weather out here in Northwest Indiana is pretty bad during the winter months. That's why we don't do a whole lot of accuracy testing. Lots of wind, precipitation, just bad weather all the way around. So anyway, it's starting to move into spring, and today seemed like a fairly decent day, 20+ mile-an-hour winds, and so not super cold and no rain, so we figured we'd come out and do that testing. For the testing today, we're going to use my favorite match ammunition, and this is from Federal Gold Medal Match. This stuff shoots good out of a toilet paper tube. I've been shooting Federal my entire life. It's just great stuff, and their match ammo is top notch. They do supply the ammunition free of charge to the channel, and so I want to thank them for doing that. But the results are always interesting, especially when using Federal Gold Medal, and that's what we're going to do in today's video. Now, if you're wondering about the setup of the rifle in the next segment, before we get into the shooting, I'll talk about the setup of the rifle, I'll talk about our experiences with the rifle thus far, and then we'll talk about the accuracy. So let's get started shooting the JAKL 308 a little bit more. The rifle really is kind of growing on me. When I was younger, I lived in Army surplus stores. That's what we called them anyway. Yeah, some people call them Army Navy stores, whatever. Surplus stores. Lived in them, loved them, really looked forward to the days that I got to go typically on the weekends when I was in high school. Well, in 2025, surplus stores are kind of hard to find. And the surplus stores that we once knew as kids, well, they're long gone. And the stuff that you will find in these stores typically is like party favors, like leather motorcycle jackets and weird stuff, cheap knives and weird things like that. Well, Venture Surplus is online, and they're like your classic surplus store. They have constantly rotating stock. They have actual government surplus, BDUs, boonie hats, gloves, hatch gloves, anything you can think of. And it's just amazing to go through. There's just page after page after page of actual military surplus and tested items. And so you can find things like this Condor jacket, but then you can find proper BDUs. You can find just about anything you're looking for and really fair pricing. Another thing that they have that I thought was interesting are actual MREs. And these things are somewhat iconic. Now, you either love or hate MREs, but you can't deny the fact that they're great long-term food storage items that are shelf-stable for years, depending on when you buy them, when they were manufactured. But the over at Venture Surplus, they don't just have MREs, they also have just dried goods, long-term storage food that's shelf-stable from 5 years to 30 years. Everything you need. So it's a great place to check out. I highly recommend swinging by and checking out Venture Surplus. I'll drop a link in the video description below. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the JAKL. So how I have it configured here is for our accuracy testing. This is a scope that I move from gun to gun. This is something that we've recently set up. I've used this system before, the side shot, which I'll talk about here in a moment. I've used it before on prairie dog hunts and stuff years ago, but I've reset it up just because I wanted to give a different perspective. Generally, we put a cell phone on a camera on the spotting scope over here, and we film at 100 yards and through the window and stuff. And it's just a kind of a different perspective on rounds hitting the target at 100 yards. I wanted the shooter or the viewer to see what the shooter, me, actually sees through the scope, and the side shot allows us to do that. And camera phones have gotten so good with their video quality, 4K and stuff like that, that it's really a nice setup. So the optic itself is a GLX primary arms scope. It's a 4-to-16 power with a 50mm objective. I used an awful lot of PA optics, and this is a primary arms scope mount that's on here as well, a crane mount. And then on the side of it is the side shot. So in essence, all this allows me to do is a little hole that goes through here, a little prism. It lines up with the camera on the back of the phone. You tighten it down, and then I can record through the scope. So again, you see what I see when I'm shooting. Now, the basic configuration, the only thing I've really done to it, aside from putting the optic on it, is that I do have a Venom from Huxworks, and this is a suppressor. This is a hub mount type suppressor, one of their newer models. Some folks will say, well, for accuracy testing, we think that suppressors mess with the accuracy or mess with the velocity. In our relatively extensive experience with multiple different firearms and suppressors in testing the velocity and all that stuff, it does mess with the velocity. If anything, you'll get 5 to 10 feet per second on average faster velocity, which is so insignificant in the grand scheme of things, it's really kind of hard to measure. So no, it doesn't really change things much in terms of velocity. Accuracy, it definitely messes with accuracy with a lot of firearms, and in a good way. So if you go back to our scope, our SCAR 20 video, we did a whole video testing it without a suppressor, and it was about a 2-inch gun. And I thought, well, you know what, let's put a can on it, even though FN voids your warranty if you do it. I put the can on it, and lo and behold, that gun became a consistent sub-MOA gun. So, and we'll see that on bolt actions, gas guns, all sorts of stuff. So generally speaking, a suppressor will improve accuracy. And how does it do that? Adding the extra weight to the end of the barrel can influence the harmonics of the barrel in a positive way. Now, sometimes it may be negative. And if we do run into negative outcomes, then we'll remove the suppressor and do testing with and without and see if the suppressor is truly negatively affecting the accuracy. But we haven't seen any of that with this particular rifle. So that's the basic setup of the gun. Now as I've already talked about, we're going to use Federal Gold Medal Match today. I do want to talk about some of the concerns folks have had. I've seen some posts in my videos and in others, and so let's just quickly address that really quick. And I think I talked about this in our original video. The gun is a screw build. It has lots of screws in it. And is that a problem? Well, perhaps if this is your only go-to-war type firearm, you'll definitely want to Loctite these and make sure that they're super set, right? But for me, and a range rifle that this is, or maybe a hunting rifle or something like that, this isn't my primary fighting rifle or defensive rifle. I don't really care about that. If a screw backs out, I'll note it, Loctite it, and move on. We've said many times here at the Military Arms channel, not every firearm has to serve a tactical or even a practical purpose. You're allowed to own firearms that are just fun to shoot. And this gun will fall into the practical category in my experience so far, and it is a lot of fun to shoot. So yeah, another thing that we've seen folks talking about that we haven't seen yet, not any significant way, is rust. And we have a couple hundred rounds of this thing. We haven't really flogged it that hard, but we've been shooting it and not oiling it, just putting it away. And I've kind of wiped it down so you can kind of see the metal itself. But people talk about rust, and you can see finish wear where you would expect it, but I do not see any surface rust. The only place that we found rust in our examination was inside the little holes back here, and that's fairly common. So we ran Q-tips down there and oiled it, and not that big of a deal. I have like the SIG, MCX or Spear, or AR-180 down in the holes where those springs would ride on those particular bolt carriers. I have found rust in those. Again, just lube it in part of your regular maintenance. Just run Q-tips down there and make sure it's well lubed. But externally, I've not seen any rust anywhere else on the firearm. This is aluminum, so naturally we're not going to see rust on that. And then it's also Cerakoted, which rust and Cerakote don't happen together. So yeah, the rifle seems to be doing pretty darn good so far. The wear is not excessive. It's fairly minor. And again, you can see it's pretty dry. We're not running it super wet. And yeah, it runs just fine. So I really like the captive recoil spring on these. So many newer designs, they're not captive. And you can see like it's just setting in there, and you don't have to push it very far, collapse it very much to get it to lock in. That reduces the likelihood of it flying out of the receiver and hitting you in the face. So, all right. So that's pretty much it. Now let's get to our accuracy testing part of the video, because this should prove to be really, really interesting. You just kind of don't know what to expect. The build, basically looking at it, it doesn't look like, I don't see any real big gotchas, like nothing's heavily pushing on the barrel. The barrel isn't clamped to the handguard or anything like that that might indicate it would have accuracy issues. So it'll be interesting to see how this thing shoots and what type of groups we can get out of it. So let's get to that part of the video, because I'm kind of looking forward to it myself. All right, so the moment of truth. How'd she do? Check this stuff out. This actually surprised me a little bit. All right, so what do we got? So 168s, generally speaking, with a 1 in 10 twist, give me the best accuracy at 100 yards. Now, the 175s, I've seen them give better performance at distance, but we wanted to test some 175s as well. So we started off with the 168s. This is our zeroing target. So this was, once I got the thing on steel and I thought it was pretty close, then I fired 168s and 175s into this test target as I was getting it finally dialed in. All right, so first group. 168 grain Federal Gold Medal Match, 3 shots, 0.69 of an inch. So sub-MOA for that 3-shot group. Next up was a 5-shot group with a 168 Federal Gold Medal Match. As you can see, the group is very consistent, right? It's in the same spot of the target, and it's just as tight with 5 shots. 0.78, so again, sub-MOA for a 5-shot group. Very good accuracy, folks. This is quality AR-10 accuracy. And so that is impressive with match ammunition. 175s, and this is kind of what I expected. 3-shot group, 2 through the same hole almost, and 1 up here. Just a little over an inch for a 3-shot group. Fairly common performance. So then we moved over to a 5-shot group with 175 grain federal gold medal match. And again, just a little over 1 inch. All right, so we had 4 shots right here, very good, and then a little bit of a flyer there. This was ball rounds, and we noticed the can was loose after this. It was just a little bit loose. The hub adapter had come loose, and we got a flyer out of it. So right after I saw the flyer, we checked the can and tightened everything back up with a strap wrench. But this is, we didn't measure the group size, but this is pretty average performance for just ball ammo, just range ammo. All right, so after that, we went back to 175s after tightening the can down to see if that had any effect on the accuracy. And it gave us pretty similar performance, actually worse. 1.5 inches for a 5-shot group. And then we went to a 3-shot group with the 175s, just double checking. 0.94, so it's just under an inch. Right here, not too bad. Then we went back over to the 150 grain ball, and we had 4 rounds here and 1 wild flyer, but the can wasn't loose. And that was the end of it. So, guys, yes, it is a sub-minute capable firearm up to 5 shots. We didn't go any further than 5-shot groups. The ammunition we don't have a whole lot of, even though Federal does supply it to the channel for free. We don't keep that much of it on hand. It is very expensive ammunition. So what are my thoughts? Did I expect sub-minute performance? Not really. I was guessing 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inch groups fairly consistently. But I think with the 168 Federal Gold Medal, maybe with some different ammunition, maybe if you're a hand loader and you work up a load tailored to the gun, you might even get it into the half MOA accuracy. And that is darn impressive for a gas gun, folks. These things are $1,500 or so. They're not super expensive in the grand scheme of things. They're quite a bit different, obviously, being a long stroke gas piston than an AR-10. But it's still a very pleasant rifle to shoot. That long stroke gas piston adds some weight to it, stability. So long stroke gas pistons, my first favorite for recoil management would be direct gas impingement, like an AR-10 or AR-15. And then long stroke gas piston, and then short stroke gas piston. They tend to be the most abrupt. So overall, just an outstanding shooting gun. Yeah, I think for future testing, we're just going to run a 150 grain ball through it. We're going to put a red dot sight on it, and we'll get it up to, a couple thousand rounds before we report back in on the gun, and just see if we run into any issues over time throughout the course of the summer, see if any screws back out, if any wild wear takes place or rust starts to accumulate someplace. So far, we've had no issues with the gun, and the accuracy is actually quite impressive. All right, guys, if you have any questions about the JAKL and 308, you can ask those questions down below. I do try to stick around for the first couple of days after I post a new video to answer any questions you guys may have. If you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms channel so we can continue to bring you content like this, consider becoming part of our Patreon family. Link in the video description below. Also, right here on YouTube, you got the thanks and subscribe button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash either one of those buttons. You can help support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. Thank you for 17 years of support. Swing by, check out Copper Custom. Talk to you guys soon.